The hustler who turned a bully's wallet inside out. The setup. Jackson was the kind of guy who didn't take no for an answer, especially when it came to his worth. He lived in a cramped, two-bedroom apartment in South Philly with his ma, trying to flip vintage sneakers to keep the lights on. His ma, a woman who'd spent 30 years scrubbing floors, was always on his case. Jackson, she'd say, just take the warehouse job. It's steady. It's safe. But Jackson would just shake his head. Ma, those guys, they treat you like a cog in a machine. I'm my father's son. I got vision, and I won't let some middle manager talk down to me for $12 an hour. One Saturday, Jackson headed down to the local flea market with a rare pair of midnight blue Jordan 1s. He knew their value, $500, minimum. That's when Big Sal rolled up. Big Sal was the local kingpin of the neighborhood. A man who owned half the real estate and all of the ego. Hey, kid, Sal barked, pointing a cigar at the shoes. I'll give you $50 for the pair. My nephew wants them. Jackson didn't even blink. 50? You're missing a zero, pal. These are 500. Firm. Sal laughed, a deep, ugly sound. Listen to this punk. Do you know who I am? I own this block. You give them to me for 50, or you don't sell nothing here ever again. Jackson looked him dead in the eye. Then I guess I'm not selling. Now, move along, you're blocking the sunlight. The crowd gasped. Sal's face turned a shade of purple Jackson didn't know existed. He didn't say a word, he just snapped his fingers. Two massive guys, bricks with necks, grabbed Jackson, dragged him behind a dumpster, and let their fists do the talking. They took the shoes. They took his wallet. And they left Jackson bleeding on the asphalt. As he spat out a mouthful of blood, Jackson whispered to the empty air. 1, 2, 3. You're gonna pay me back 3 times over, Sal. I promise you that. The first payment. 2 weeks later, Sal was overseeing the renovation of his new luxury lounge. He needed a custom mahogany bar top, but his usual guy flaked. A young man in overalls and a heavy-duty face mask approached him. Yo, I heard you're looking for a master carpenter. I'm the best in the city. Sal, too arrogant to recognize the kid he'd beaten up under a layer of sawdust and a mask, grunted. Yeah? Prove it. Jackson, in disguise, led Sal out to a supply yard in the industrial district. I got a special slab of reclaimed oak hidden back here. Most durable stuff in the country. Come check the grain. They walked deep into the stacks of lumber, far from the street noise. Right there, Jackson said, pointing to a massive, upright beam. Put your ear to it. You can hear the density. As Sal leaned in, hugging the beam to inspect it. Click. Jackson snapped a pair of heavy-duty industrial zip ties around Sal's wrists, pinning him to the post. Who the? Sal started to roar, but Jackson pulled off the mask. Remember me? The sneaker kid? Jackson didn't use his fists. He used a heavy, wet rope. He whipped Sal's designer suit until the man was sobbing for mercy. That's one, Jackson whispered, reaching into Sal's pocket and taking a roll of $1,000 bills. 2 more to go, Sal. Keep your eyes open. The second payment. A month later, Sal was a nervous wreck. He was suffering from mysterious back pains and wouldn't leave his house. He put out an ad for a private physical therapist who could work in total secrecy. A specialist arrived, wearing thick glasses, a lab coat, and a fake beard. I have a revolutionary treatment from Switzerland, Jackson said in a muffled, high-pitched voice. But it requires total sensory deprivation to work. You must be blindfolded and strapped into the inversion table. Sal was desperate. Anything, document. Just fix the pain. Once Sal was strapped down, vulnerable and blind, Jackson leaned into his ear. You know what helps with back pain? Accountability. He ripped off the beard. Sal's eyes went wide with terror. Jackson spent the next hour adjusting Sal's attitude with a series of painful, high-intensity pressure point strikes. Before leaving, Jackson cleaned out Sal's floor safe. That's 2, he said, tossing a gold watch in the air. The third one is gonna be the one you never see coming. The final payback. Jackson used the investments he'd taken from Sal to start a legitimate high-end sneaker boutique. He was successful. He was clean. But he hadn't forgotten his promise. There was a massive charity gala in the city, the kind of place where Sal went to pretend he was a pillar of the community. Sal arrived with 4 bodyguards, looking over his shoulder every 5 seconds. A delivery driver on a moped zoomed past the red carpet, shouting, Hey Sal. The sneaker kid is in the alley. He's got a gun. The bodyguards, smelling a massive bonus, bolted toward the alley to catch the assassin. Sal stood there, alone on the red carpet, breathing hard. Suddenly, a sleek black SUV pulled up. The window rolled down. It was Jackson, dressed in a $3,000 tuxedo, looking like $1 million. He stepped out, walked right up to Sal in front of the flashing cameras and the city's elite, and slapped him. Hard. The sound echoed like a gunshot. That's for my ma, Jackson said, his voice calm and cold. That's for the shoes, he said, slapping him again with the back of his hand. And that is for thinking you could own a man's dignity. The cameras captured everything. The king of the neighborhood was reduced to a shaking, humiliated mess on the evening news. Jackson got back in his car and drove home to his ma. He didn't need to steal anymore. He'd won. Because in America, it's not about who has the biggest fist. It's about who has the biggest plan. The final hustle, turning a kingpin into a ghost. The rat in the corner. Sal didn't just crawl into a hole and die after the gala. No. Guys like him just get meaner when they're embarrassed. He was holed up in his mansion, paranoid, surrounded by hired muscle he didn't even trust anymore. He put out a hit on Jackson. $50,000 for Jackson's head, or at least, his hands. Jackson heard about it within the hour. In Philly, the walls have ears, and Jackson had been paying those ears very well with his new sneaker profits. His ma was terrified. Jackson, please, she begged, take the money and run to Jersey. Stay with your aunt. Jackson just smiled, kissed her forehead, and checked his phone. Ma, in the old days, you fought with your fists. These days? You fight with data. The tech trap. Jackson knew Sal's weakness, greed. He hired a genius kid from Temple University to build a phantom crypto mining site. Then, he sent a tip to one of Sal's remaining associates. The tip was simple: Jackson is laundering all his sneaker money through a private server. Here's the backdoor password. Sal, desperate to claw back the fortune Jackson had already taxed from him, bit the hook hard. He sat in his darkened office, clicking the link. He thought he was draining Jackson's accounts. But the moment he hit enter, a progress bar appeared on his screen. Upload complete. Jackson wasn't losing money. He was extracting Sal's entire digital life. Every bribe to the city council, every illegal offshore account, every off-the-books property. As the bar hit 100%, Jackson's voice came through the computer speakers. Check your front gate, Sal, the guest of honor just arrived. The ghost of South Philly. Sal ran to his window. He expected an army. He expected the police. Instead, he saw one man. Jackson. Jackson was standing under the streetlight, wearing a fresh pair of those midnight blue Jordans, the ones Sal had stolen that first day. Sal grabbed his pearl-handled revolver and ran outside, screaming like a madman. I'm gonna end this. Right here. Jackson didn't move. He didn't even take his hands out of his pockets. Go ahead, Sal, Jackson said, his voice as smooth as glass. Pull the trigger. But before you do, check your phone. I just BCC'd your entire hard drive to the FBI, and the IRS, and more importantly, to your rivals over in North Philly. Sal froze. His thumb stayed on the hammer, but his heart hit his shoes. If anything happens to me, Jackson continued, stepping closer until the barrel of the gun was inches from his chest, the encryption key to those files dies with me. And you? You'll spend the rest of your life in a cell, or in a casket. The new king. Sal's hand began to shake. The king of the neighborhood looked small. He looked old. What do you want? Sal whispered, his voice cracking. I want you to leave, Jackson said. I want you to sign over the deed to that community center you're trying to turn into condos. I want you to take your business and get out of my city. By sunrise. Sal dropped the gun. It hit the pavement with a heavy thud. The next morning, the big Sal signs were being torn down. A week later, Jackson opened the doors to the Cedar Youth Center, a place where kids could learn to code, design shoes, and most importantly, learn that you don't have to be a bully to be a boss. Jackson stood on the front steps, his ma by his side. She looked at the building, then at her son. You did it, Jackson, she whispered. You really did it. Jackson looked down at his sneakers, then out at the neighborhood. The concrete jungle's new king meets the corporate shark. The shadow on the sidewalk. Success has a funny way of drawing out the vultures. Jackson's youth center was thriving. The Cedar sign glowed in neon blue every night, a beacon for every kid in South Philly who wanted to be more than a statistic. But then came Mr. Sterling. Sterling wasn't a street thug like Big Sal. He wore $5,000 Italian suits, carried a slim leather briefcase, and spoke with a voice like silk over sandpaper. He represented Apex Development, a multi-billion-dollar firm. He walked into Jackson's sneaker boutique one Tuesday afternoon, not to buy, but to conquer. Mr. Jackson, Sterling said, looking at a pair of shoes like they were pieces of trash. Your little project is sitting on a gold mine. My clients want this block for a new tech hub. I'm prepared to offer you $2 million to walk away. Jackson didn't even look up from the ledger. The center isn't for sale, Sterling. Those kids finally have a place to breathe. You can't put a price on that. Sterling leaned over the counter, his eyes turning cold. I'm not Sal, kid. I don't use baseball bats. I use zoning laws. I use health inspectors, and I use the bank. By the time I'm done, you won't just be out of a building. You'll be in debt for the next 3 generations. Jackson finally looked up. He saw the same arrogance he'd seen in Sal's eyes, just with better dental work. Is that a threat? Jackson asked. Sterling smiled. It's a forecast. Rain is coming, Jackson. Better find an umbrella. The first squeeze. The rain started the next day. Suddenly, the youth center was hit with 12 code violations. The water was shut off. The bank froze the boutique's credit line, claiming irregular activity. Jackson's ma was worried sick. Jackson, they're powerful people. Maybe we take the money? We could move to the suburbs. Be safe. Jackson felt that old fire in his gut. Ma, if we run now, we're telling every kid in that center that the big guys always win. I'm not running. I'm going to make Sterling wish he'd stayed in his glass tower. The counter heist. Jackson knew he couldn't outsue a billionaire. He had to out-hustle him. He gathered his sneaker squad, the kids from the center who were geniuses at social media and tech. All right, fam, Jackson said, pointing to a blueprint of Sterling's new high-rise project. Sterling thinks we're playing checkers. Let's show him we're playing Grand Theft Auto. Step 1, Jackson discovered that Apex Development was cutting corners. They were using cheap, subgrade concrete for their foundations to save millions, while charging the city for premium materials. Jackson didn't go to the police. Not yet. He waited for the grand groundbreaking gala. The biggest event of the year for the city's elite. The third slap. The gala was held at the construction site. Sterling was on stage, golden shovel in hand, surrounded by the mayor and the press. This project, Sterling beamed into the microphone, is built on a foundation of integrity. BZZZT. The giant projector screens behind him flickered to life. But it wasn't the promotional video. It was a hidden camera feed. It showed Sterling in his private office, laughing as he signed off on the low-grade concrete delivery. Who cares if the basement cracks in 10 years? Sterling's voice boomed through the speakers. By then, I'll be in the Maldives, and the taxpayers will be picking up the bill. Those South Philly rats don't know the difference anyway. The silence in the crowd was deafening. Sterling's face went from pale to ghostly white. Jackson stepped out from the wings, wearing a simple hoodie and his signature Jordans. He walked right up to the podium. He didn't slap Sterling with his hand. He slapped a thick folder of evidence onto the podium. The rats know exactly what integrity looks like, Sterling, Jackson said, his voice carrying through the quiet. And they also know what a fraud looks like. The legacy. By the next morning, Apex Development stock had plummeted. Sterling was being led away in handcuffs for criminal negligence and contract fraud. The city, embarrassed by the scandal, granted the youth center historical landmark status. It could never be torn down. Jackson stood on the roof of the center that evening, watching the sunset over the Philadelphia skyline. His phone buzzed. It was a message from a kid at the center. Yo Jackson, thanks for standing up for us. You're a legend. Jackson looked at the neon Sidama sign. He realized that revenge isn't about hurting people, it's about making sure the people who try to hurt you lose their power to do it to anyone else. He adjusted his hat, looked at the city, and whispered. Game over.